I met Melissa at a friend's engagement party in a crowded rooftop bar downtown. It was one of those events where I didn't really want to be there, but showed up out of obligation. I was standing near the food table, pretending to care about a conversation about fantasy football, when she walked over to grab a drink. We locked eyes for half a second, smiled awkwardly, and I said something dumb about the shrimp cocktail. She laughed. Not politely, genuinely. That's how it started. We talked for the rest of the night. Not about work or weather or small talk fluff, but about real things, how she wanted to start her own business someday, how I just moved out of a long-term relationship and wasn't sure where I was going next. She was quick, sarcastic, and asked real questions. It caught me off guard in the best way. A week later, we had our first real date. Sushi. She corrected how I held chopsticks and told me my shirt needed ironing. I thought she was joking, she wasn't. But there was something honest in it that made me laugh. She wasn't trying to impress me. She was just herself. That was refreshing. We moved in together after a year and a half, got married about 12 months after that. A small ceremony, 20 people, a lake, no DJ, just a playlist we made the night before. She wore a simple dress with a small gold pin that had been her grandmother's. I remember her looking more grounded than nervous, like she already knew what we were walking into. I admired that about her. Still do, in some ways. Now we live in a 3-bedroom house in a quiet suburb about 45 minutes from the city. I work in accounting for a mid-sized logistics company, steady hours, decent pay, not glamorous, but stable. Melissa works in marketing for a beauty brand. Mostly remote now, which she loves. She sets her own hours, takes mid-morning walks, listens to podcasts while she works. She's always been good at carving out her own space, even when we're sharing the same roof. Our routines are normal. Predictable, even. She handles groceries. I do the cooking. We both take turns with laundry. She's better with finances. I'm better with fixing things around the house. We meet in the middle. Weekends are split between seeing friends, working on the house, or just crashing on the couch with a bottle of wine and something half-decent to stream. It's not flashy, but it feels like real life. Or at least, it did. Looking back now, it's strange how normal everything seemed. How easy it was to think that comfort meant security. That routine meant trust. But back then, I wasn't looking for cracks. I thought we were solid. I thought she was happy, and I had no reason to think otherwise. Mornings in our house always started the same way. I'd wake up around 6:45, roll out of bed quietly so I wouldn't wake Melissa, and head downstairs to start the coffee. She's not a morning person. I learned that early. I used to joke that she was 2 sips away from being human again by 8 a.m., and she never disagreed. By the time she came down, still wrapped in her robe, hair pinned back with one of those oversized clips, I'd have her mug ready, splash of oat milk, no sugar. She always smiled when she saw it. "You know me too well," she'd say. We ate breakfast together maybe 2 or 3 times a week, usually on Fridays when things felt slower, or on the weekends when we had time to sit without staring at the clock. Most days, she'd take her coffee to her desk and get a head start on emails while I made a smoothie or toasted something frozen. Not glamorous, but steady, comfortable. Her office was the front bedroom. She decorated it exactly how she wanted. Clean white walls, soft lighting, a gold-framed corkboard full of sticky notes and product mock-ups, and a diffuser that always smelled like lavender or something vaguely citrusy. I'd pass by her door sometimes on the way to grab a snack or check the mail and hear her on calls, professional, upbeat, in control. That was Melissa in her element. Confident. Efficient. She thrived when she was the one directing things. My work was quieter, numbers, spreadsheets, a running list of internal reports. I liked it. It gave me space to think, and I was good at it. The people at the office respected me. My boss, Alan, was demanding but fair. I'd been with the company for almost 8 years, climbing slowly but steadily. Melissa used to tease me about how unsexy accounting was, but she always said it with pride underneath. "You're the guy who makes sure everything works," she once told me. "People don't notice that until you're gone." We usually reconnected around 6 or 7 in the evening, when the laptops shut and dinner started. We alternated cooking, depending on who felt more burned out. I liked to grill. She made a mean stir-fry. Sometimes we sat at the table. Other times, it was the couch and whatever show we were halfway through. Lately, it was some drama she picked, the kind where everyone's always whispering in hallways and looking suspicious. I pretended not to care, but I always ended up asking questions about the plot halfway through. Weekends were the best version of us. Lazy mornings with the dog in bed. Grocery runs where we argued over which cereal to get and always left with both. Long drives to nowhere, just because. She'd play DJ, I'd drive. She knew all the back roads and half the lyrics, and I liked listening to her sing under her breath when she thought I wasn't paying attention. There was a rhythm to us. A flow. Not perfect, but solid. She was my person. We built something that felt strong, anchored in the ordinary, but ours all the same. And for a long time, I believed we were both standing on the same ground. If someone had asked me then whether I was happy, I wouldn't have hesitated. I would have said yes. Not because everything was perfect, but because it was real. It was a life we built, day by day, and I genuinely thought we were both still choosing it. Melissa and I had developed a shorthand over the years. She'd raise an eyebrow from across the room, and I'd know she wanted to leave a party. I'd leave her favorite chocolate on the kitchen counter after a grocery run, and she'd leave a sticky note on my laptop the next morning that just said, "Thank you. You're cute." It wasn't grand gestures, it was the consistency, the way we always returned to each other in the quiet moments. That's what made it feel solid. We'd talk sometimes about what was next, not in a 5-year plan kind of way, but just little what-ifs. Maybe a trip to Spain. Maybe a new kitchen if we finally saved enough. She even brought up getting a dog again, even though she was the one who had said, absolutely not, after we lost the last one. I was open to it. Life felt like it was moving forward, even if it wasn't fast. Our families both liked to say we made marriage look easy. I always smiled at that, even though I knew better. It wasn't that it was easy, it was that we tried. We checked in. We split responsibilities. We forgave quickly. We didn't let small annoyances fester. And to my knowledge, we never lied. That, I thought, was the difference. Melissa had a wide social circle, old college friends, co-workers she stayed in touch with, friends of friends she somehow turned into regular brunch dates. I didn't keep up with it all, but I trusted her. She was independent, but not distant. She made time for her people and for us. She never gave me a reason to doubt that her world outside of me was just another part of a whole life, not something secret or separate. I liked that she had her own thing. I liked that we weren't in each other's pockets all the time. I thought it was healthy. I thought it meant we'd figured out a way to stay individuals while still building a life together. Looking back now, maybe I confused space with security. We even had little routines around time apart. When she went on weekend trips with friends, I'd order in the meals she didn't like, binge the shows she rolled her eyes at, clean the house top to bottom so she'd come back to something fresh. She always said she loved that, walking back into calm. I always took pride in that. So when she sat me down one evening and casually mentioned a trip she wanted to take with some friends, just a short break, a getaway, I didn't question it. Why would I? Everything felt normal. Everything felt fine. It was a Thursday night, quiet like most of ours. We just finished eating simple grilled chicken and rice, and were sitting on opposite ends of the couch, half watching something neither of us was invested in. I was scrolling through my work emails when Melissa set her phone down and said, "Hey, can we talk about something real quick?" I paused the TV. "Sure. What's up?" She curled her legs under her, folding into that relaxed posture she always used when she was trying to sound casual. "So, Carly and Michelle are planning a trip. Just a quick getaway. 5 days. Cabo, or maybe the Keys. Nothing wild, just a break. And I was thinking about going. I didn't think twice." Melissa worked hard. She hadn't taken any real time off in months, and if there was one thing I learned in our marriage, it was that she needed space to recharge in her own way. I nodded. "Yeah, that sounds good. When were you thinking?" "End of the month, probably. It's still cheap enough to get decent flights." She paused. "Would you be okay covering part of it?" "Just the flight and hotel. I'll take care of the rest." "How much?" She hesitated. "About $1,800. I know that's a lot, and I'll pay you back after my bonus hits, but I figured I'd ask before prices go up." I didn't hesitate. "Yeah, no problem. We've got the room in savings." Her eyes lit up a little, and she leaned over to kiss me on the cheek. "You're the best. I promise I'll bring you something back. Just don't ask me to get you a t-shirt with a flamingo on it." We both laughed. It felt normal. Easy. I transferred the money that night. She booked the trip the next morning, said it was all set, that she was excited for some sun and quiet time with the girls. I didn't press for details. I never had to. We'd always given each other that kind of freedom. It was part of what made our marriage feel balanced, like we trusted each other enough not to be invasive. She talked about the trip here and there over the next week, how she needed a new swimsuit, which book she was packing, how one of the girls had found a great spa package at the resort. I smiled, nodded, listened, even helped her pick out a travel charger. I liked seeing her excited. I liked being the kind of husband who supported her independence. What I didn't know, what I had no reason to even consider, was that there was no Carly, no Michelle, no girls' trip. Melissa was going to Cabo. With Alan, my boss. And I didn't have the slightest idea. The morning she left, everything looked like it usually did. Melissa was buzzing around the bedroom, throwing last-minute things into her bag, muttering about forgetting her sunglasses, asking if I remembered where we kept the travel-sized sunscreen. She looked excited, casual, comfortable. I helped zip her suitcase and loaded it into the trunk. We drove to the airport in near silence, but not in a tense way. Just in that familiar kind of quiet that settles between people who know each other well. She scrolled on her phone most of the ride, tapping through what I assumed was the group chat with her friends. I didn't ask. I was focused on the road. When we got to departures, she leaned over and kissed me. "You're the best," she said. "Seriously. I owe you." I smiled and waved as she disappeared into the crowd, her tote bag slung over one shoulder, moving through the sliding doors without a backward glance. It wasn't until I was halfway home that the quiet started to feel heavy. I chalked it up to the usual post-airport drop-off blues, nothing unusual. I figured I'd fill the next few days with errands, takeout, and whatever shows Melissa usually rolled her eyes at. But by that evening, something started to feel off. She didn't text when she landed. Not until 3 hours later, and even then it was just landed. Crazy long customs line. "I'll text you after dinner XX." I replied. "Glad you're there safe. Enjoy it." But she didn't text after dinner. The next morning, she sent a picture of the resort pool. It looked gorgeous, palm trees, a half-full drink in the foreground, someone's book just out of frame. No people, no context, no friends. I told myself not to overthink it. Maybe she was trying to unplug. Maybe everyone else was off getting massages or asleep by the pool. Still, it was strange. Melissa usually overshared on trips, boomerangs of beach towels, dinner selfies with cocktails, those overhead shots of brunch plates she always captioned with, "Yes, please." But this time, it was like she was editing the trip as she went, only sending me the cleanest, most distant versions of the experience. When I asked how the other girls were, she replied, "Good. Everyone's relaxing. Carly got sunburned already, LOL." That was it. The messages slowed down after that. 2 or 3 a day, short and light. No calls. I offered once, "Want to FaceTime later?" But she said the Wi-Fi was too weak. I didn't push, but I couldn't help noticing how different she seemed. The tone, the detachment. Like I was watching someone I loved drift into another world, and I wasn't sure if she'd bring me back anything from it when she returned. Still, I told myself to wait, to be patient. People change on vacation. They need space. It didn't mean anything, right? By the 3rd day of Melissa's trip, I had stopped expecting real conversation from her. The texts still came, but they were thinner than usual. Shorter. Emptier. A photo of a dinner plate with no caption. A "we're heading to the beach" message that sounded like it was written by someone checking a box. I tried to convince myself it was nothing. That she was just present with her friends, trying to unplug like she said she would. That it was a good thing she wasn't glued to her phone. And yet, something about it gnawed at me. It wasn't just the silence, it was how curated it all felt. Like I was watching a version of her that was carefully arranged for my benefit. Melissa used to text me details, tiny, random things that made her feel close even when she was far away. Like how the waitress looked like her cousin, or how someone at the next table was wearing Crocs to a nice dinner. Those little things mattered. They reminded me that I was still part of her world, even when I wasn't standing next to her. But now? Now I was getting travel brochure updates. A picture of a pool. A second picture of her drink. A blurry photo of a sunrise that could have been pulled from any resort website. When I asked her what book she was reading, she replied, "Something light. I'll tell you about it when I'm back." That was the first time I realized I didn't recognize the tone in her messages. I didn't say anything. I didn't accuse or pry. I just let her keep sending half updates, even as I felt them landing further and further away from anything real. That Friday night, I ordered takeout from the Thai place we used to go to and ate alone at the kitchen counter. I thought about calling her just to hear her voice, but I remembered what she said about the Wi-Fi and decided against it. Instead, I scrolled through old pictures on my phone. Us on the patio. Her laughing in the passenger seat of my car. Little moments that felt full of presence, like she was all the way there. This version of her, the one on the other end of the occasional "vacation's going great" message, didn't feel present at all. And the strange part? She didn't seem to notice. Or worse, she did notice. And she just didn't care. The final 2 days of Melissa's trip were the hardest, not because anything dramatic happened, but because of how quiet everything remained. By then, I'd given up expecting phone calls or even a genuine check-in. The messages she sent were routine at best, like she was keeping up an appearance, not actually talking to me. A picture of her feet in the sand. A blurry sunset with no caption. One message that simply read, "Last day. Already dreading the flight." No detail, no warmth, no "miss you." I stared at that text longer than I care to admit. I kept rereading it, hoping something would click into place, some explanation that would make the past few days make sense. But it wasn't just about the texts. It was how they made me feel. Like I wasn't a part of her life anymore, not even temporarily. I wasn't missed. I wasn't really present. I was a checkpoint. A box she was still checking, out of habit or guilt or maybe just convenience. On Saturday, I spent the entire day cleaning the house. It's something I usually do when she's away. I like her to come back to everything fresh and calm. I folded all the laundry, vacuumed the rugs, even washed the windows, which we both knew I never do unless I'm trying to overcompensate for something. I tried to convince myself that she'd walk through the door, thank me for keeping the place together, and things would fall right back into place. But underneath that hope was something heavier, a tightness in my chest that I couldn't shake. I didn't recognize what it was yet, not fully, but I felt it every time I walked into a room alone. Every time I saw something of hers and felt unsure about who I was really waiting for. Her flight was supposed to land Sunday evening. I texted her that morning, asking if she needed anything at home, groceries, coffee, something warm ready when she walked through the door. She replied, "No, all good. I'll probably be exhausted. Might just crash early." No emojis. No, can't wait to see you. Just that flat, transactional tone again. I responded with, "Okay, safe travels." She didn't write back. All day, I waited. I checked the time every hour. I kept the living room lights on as the sun went down, expecting to hear her key in the door any moment. But even as I waited, I wasn't picturing the Melissa I knew. I was trying to, but something had shifted too far. I didn't know what she would be like when she got home. I didn't know if I was supposed to ask about the trip or pretend I didn't notice how far away she'd felt. All I knew was that something had gone missing between us, and I wasn't sure she'd even noticed it was gone. And the worst part? I was still holding on to the version of her that used to come home eager to tell me everything, not realizing that maybe that version of her was already gone. I heard the car door first, then laughter, two voices, hers and a man's. At first, I thought maybe it was an Uber driver helping with bags, or a neighbor passing by. I got up from the couch, still barefoot, still unsure, and opened the front door just as she was walking up the steps. She froze. Not because she was surprised to see me, it was clear she expected I'd be home. No, she froze because of who was beside her. Alan, my boss. I must have stood there for a solid 5 seconds, blinking like I was seeing something impossible. Alan was dressed in casual travel clothes, tanned and relaxed, like he'd just returned from a weekend golf trip. Melissa didn't say a word. She just stood there beside him, her sunglasses still on, her mouth pulled into something that wasn't quite a smile and wasn't quite a frown. Alan was the first to speak. "Hey, can we come in?" I didn't move. Melissa stepped forward, brushing past me like she owned the place, like I was the guest in my own home. "We should talk," she said, tossing her bag down near the entryway like she'd done 100 times before, except now, I could smell his cologne on her. I closed the door without saying a word. We stood in the living room, all three of us. I looked from her to him and back again, still waiting for someone to explain what the hell was happening. Melissa sighed, crossing her arms like I was making this difficult. "We've been seeing each other," she said. "I didn't want you to find out like this, but, well, I guess here we are." I felt the blood rush to my ears. "You're serious?" Alan stepped forward, hands half raised like I was some kind of unstable animal. "Listen, man, I didn't plan for this to happen. But things evolved." Melissa cut in, her voice sharper. "Evolved? You make it sound accidental." I stared at her, still searching for the version of her I used to know, the one who'd leave notes in my lunchbox, who asked about my meetings, who made me coffee every morning. But that person wasn't here. This version of her looked through me like I was furniture. "You're a good guy," she said. "But let's be honest, you've been stuck in the same job for years. No ambition. No spark. I tried to make it work. but I need more." Then Alan added, like he was offering me a consolation prize, and we talked it over. "It's probably best if you don't come back to the office." It hit me like a second betrayal. Not just my marriage, but my career, my reputation, my entire foundation. He was firing me. In my own living room. Melissa picked up her bag again, not because she was leaving, but because she was leaving with him. "We're staying at his place for a while," she said. "I'll come by for the rest of my things later. Just, don't make this harder than it has to be." They turned and walked out together. And I just stood there, surrounded by everything we built, knowing none of it meant anything to her anymore. She didn't just come home to end things. She came to replace me. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the edge of the bed she used to call hers, staring at the door like she might come back through it, as if there was a chance she'd realize the gravity of what she'd just done. But of course, she wouldn't. Melissa had already rewritten the story in her head, turned herself into the one who outgrew me, and me into the man who simply got left behind. The man who didn't see it coming. The man too small, too stagnant, too safe. I wasn't angry in the way I expected. I didn't scream. I didn't break anything. What I felt was sharper, colder. A clarity I hadn't known I was capable of. The next morning, I took the day off work, not that I needed to anymore, since Alan had fired me with the smugness of someone who thought he was stepping over a pawn on his way to checkmate. I showered, shaved, put on a clean shirt, and drove to the office. Not to plead for my job back. Not to cause a scene. Just to collect my things. I walked in without a word, ignored the wide eyes at reception, and emptied my desk methodically. Flash drives, documents, a few framed photos, and carefully, quietly, the tax reports. The ones Alan always insisted were handled internally. I'd always found that suspicious. I'd even flagged one of them months ago. He brushed me off. No? I had no reason to keep his secrets. Let the IRS sort it out. But that wasn't the end. There was something else I'd been sitting on for years, something Alan never knew. His wife, Lauren, used to visit the office from time to time. Sweet, soft-spoken, far too observant for someone married to a man like him. We talked casually during company barbecues or charity events, but there was always an unspoken thread there, something like mutual understanding. We never crossed any lines, but we noticed each other. And after everything, I didn't need to force anything. I just sent one message. "You deserve the truth. If you ever want to talk, I'll tell you everything." She responded within the hour. We met for coffee the next day. She hadn't known. Not fully. She suspected, but she didn't have proof. I gave her the proof, texts, dates, a timeline that painted a picture she'd probably been trying not to see for years. And in return, she gave me something I didn't expect, herself. Not in some vengeful, performative way, but in a real, human way. She was calm, kind, angry in a quiet and buried way that mirrored my own. And over the next few weeks, one meeting turned into two. Conversations turned into something more. And before either of us could name it, she was in my bed, and I was no longer alone. 2 months later, she was pregnant. I never told Melissa. I didn't need to. I imagine Alan found out eventually. I imagine that conversation went about as well as you'd expect. But I wouldn't know. I never answered their calls. Never responded to the half-hearted texts that started showing up in the weeks after they ran off together. We didn't mean for it to happen like that. "Are you okay? Can we talk?" No, we couldn't. I took back the car. My name was on the title anyway. I closed the joint account and moved what remained into a separate one. I kept the house. I kept my dignity. And I left them with exactly what they deserved, each other. Let them figure out how to live in the ruins of the lie they built. Let them discover how little trust tastes when it's the only thing missing from the foundation. Because me? I was already building something better. Starting over didn't happen all at once. There was no dramatic montage, no moment where I looked in the mirror and suddenly saw a brand new man. It was slower than that. Quieter. Like waking up and realizing the weight on your chest is gone, and you don't know exactly when it lifted, only that it's not there anymore. The first thing I noticed was how quiet the house was, truly quiet. Not that fragile silence that comes when something's wrong but no one wants to say it. This was a clean kind of silence. Peaceful. I started leaving the windows open more often. I replaced the curtains Melissa always said were just temporary. I cleared out the last of her things, bits and pieces she never came back for. The house didn't feel haunted anymore. It just felt mine. I found work again, nothing flashy, just a reliable role at another firm where I could show up, do my job, and not worry about being stabbed in the back by the guy signing my checks. The environment was different. Respectful. Stable. They'd heard about what happened. Word gets around in professional circles, but no one pried. They just welcomed me in, gave me space to prove myself, and let me move forward. And then there was Lauren. Things with her unfolded naturally, without pressure or expectation. We didn't try to define it too quickly. She was dealing with her own mess, and I didn't want to be a rebound or some temporary escape. But as weeks turned into months, we started carving out something real, something neither of us had known how much we needed until it was right in front of us. She was the opposite of what I'd known before. Grounded, thoughtful, emotionally honest. When she was upset, she said so. When she was happy, she didn't filter it. We had long conversations about everything: past hurts, fears, dreams we hadn't told anyone. I remember one evening, sitting on the back porch, she put her hand over mine and said, "I'm not trying to fix you. I just want to know you." That was the moment I realized I didn't miss what I'd lost. Not Melissa. Not the version of my life I used to cling to. That chapter was over, and I had no desire to reread it. When she told me she was pregnant, I didn't feel trapped or panicked. I felt calm. Steady. I was ready, not because I had it all figured out, but because I wasn't pretending anymore. I wasn't carrying someone else's baggage or trying to make a broken thing look whole. This was ours. New. Undecorated. But real. I stopped thinking about revenge long ago. Melissa and Alan? They weren't part of the story anymore. I didn't need them to hurt. I just needed them gone. And now they were. Whatever mess they'd made, whatever fallout they were living with, I wouldn't know. I never looked back. Because finally, I had something worth protecting. Not a perfect life, but a life of my own choosing. And for the first time, that was more than enough. It's strange, the way life keeps moving long after something you thought was permanent ends. At first, everything feels loud: grief, confusion, anger. Then it gets quiet, and you think that quiet is emptiness. But eventually, if you're lucky, you realize it's space. Space to rebuild. To choose differently. To breathe in and finally exhale without holding tension in your chest. That's where I am now. I live in a smaller place than before. Nothing fancy, a 2-bedroom just outside the city with a backyard and enough space for a garden I'll probably never plant. But it's mine. Every book on the shelf, every dish in the cabinet, every picture on the wall, it all belongs to this version of me. Not the man who ignored the signs. Not the husband who handed over his trust like a blank check. Just me, right now. Present. Settled. Lauren and I are still together. The pregnancy changed things, of course. It made everything more immediate, more real. But it also clarified something I hadn't fully understood until I saw the world through her eyes. Love doesn't need to be dramatic to be deep. It doesn't need to come with tension or second-guessing. Some days we're tired, some days we don't have much to say, but there's always this undercurrent of quiet respect. She sees me, not who I was, but who I'm trying to be. And she never asked me to be anyone else. The baby's due in a few months. We don't know if it's a boy or a girl yet, and we're not in a rush to find out. For now, it's enough just to plan for something that feels entirely new. Not a second chance. Not a do-over. Just a beginning. As for Melissa and Alan, I don't know where they are. I haven't checked. I don't need to. Whatever they have, if they even still have it, isn't my concern. That part of my life is done. Sealed off. And not with bitterness, but with finality. They made their choices. I made mine. I used to think closure would come with confrontation. That someday, I'd say all the perfect words that would make her understand what she'd done. That I'd get the apology I deserved, or the satisfaction of seeing them fall apart. But I don't think like that anymore. The truth is, closure isn't something you get from someone else. It's the moment you realize their voice no longer lives in your head. The moment you stop looking back. That's what this is. Not revenge. Not a triumph. Just peace. And for the first time in a long time, I'm not surviving anymore. I'm living.